Welcome to this week's OK at Work with myself, Sarah Sawyer, and my colleague Russell Berger, both attorneys at Offit Kurman. And today we are talking about a bill that has passed in New York City involving prohibiting height and weight discrimination in the workplace. So it hasn't been signed onto yet by the mayor, but very likely to be signed into law there. And there are some similar laws in other jurisdictions, like Michigan's had one on the books for a long time. Binghamton in New York already has one. But ultimately, it's really just adding height and weight discrimination into the existing law that already prohibits several other types of discrimination, like marital status and other ones that employers are probably much more familiar with. So it's kind of an interesting addition. You know, the height and weight are being added, just height and weight, no further description than that. So it'd be kind of interesting to see how that gets applied. But, you know, what are some things that employers might want to consider that are in New York City, or what, you know, it's kind of an interesting addition, I think, to a law.
Yeah, well, and we're seeing this, and one of the things that we did have in Maryland is the Crown Act, which added different types of hairstyles to the protected classifications. So we're seeing kind of additions to what are the traditional protected classifications. Obviously, assuming the mayor signs this is only going to be in New York City. But we may see things like this, creep down the East Coast to, where a lot of our folks sit in the Mid Atlantic, and I think it's something that we just recently did an episode on interviewing and things to avoid, as well as things to ask, but things to avoid in an interviewing process, and certainly, especially in a white collar setting, making judgments about a person and whether they'd be a good employee based on their height, their weight, or more broadly, any of their physical appearance. It's just unnecessary and shouldn't happen, and it can only get you in trouble. And as we're seeing, legislatures are reaching a little bit further to make that formal from a legal sense.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think these two types of characteristics do come up fairly often just in conversation, whether it be in an interview setting or just in the workplace. And so you could see potential claims of discrimination as it relates to promotions and things like that as well. And I think in the workplace, often folks will just be kind of free about talking about people's physical attributes and whether they're tall, whether they play basketball, whether they go to the gym, a lot of different conversations around those things. So I think in jurisdictions where this has been added, it's one of those things that's to be a little bit more mindful of those things. And I know we've talked about on here, during interviews, especially being mindful of what you're saying. But it's another thing to add into the book. It's another thing that employers will potentially have to deal with as far as claims from disgruntled employees who feel frustrated and that might meet certain characteristics that are different than others in the company. In Michigan, where this has existed since the 70s, they're really the amount of claims they get per year around these characteristics is very low. I think it's something like 29 complaints per year, and they, compared to the 1,500 or 1,600 alleging disability or race discrimination, right? So it's just a very small portion of the claims that they get, but they do get claims, right? So be interested to see kind of what those claims look like. I haven't read any of those cases in Michigan. I don't, have an occasion to do so, but would be interested to see what those fact patterns are. But definitely something to be mindful. And in jurisdictions like, DC and other places that are similar to New York, there's always a chance that they adopt similar things as well.
Yeah. And the more practical point for jurisdictions where that isn't the law yet, but obviously there are other laws that guard against discrimination based on membership in any number of protected classifications. The advice is pretty simple. Make decisions based on merit and performance, and the substance of a job applicant or an employee's work, and not based on any inalienable physical characteristics, whether it's a specific violation of the law or not. The advice we always give when we do trainings is lawyers fight over what is and what isn't a violation of the law all the time. That's kind of our full-time job, is to fight over where that line should be drawn. But from a practical, employment management sense, just don't get anywhere near the line. There's no reason to toe the line. You're not really gaining anything by doing that. So, steer clear. And you can add height and weight to the list, whether it's a law or not, of things you should steer clear of commenting on, considering, putting into your calculus when you're making employment decisions.
Good advice. Well, thanks, Russell, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Sarah.